The first thing I heard was static. Then a voice, faint and breaking, said the word Mayday. The handwriting on the cassette sleeve was my father's. The official monthly summary on the table in front of me recorded November 9, 1997 as a routine watch with no distress traffic. I held both things at the same time and understood that they could not both be accurate. What I did not yet know was which one was wrong, or whether the man who left them both in this room had been the one doing the lying. That was a Tuesday morning in April 2026. I had driven to the Belmullet Auxiliary radio station to count equipment. The job had come through the Aris Coastal Heritage Trust, which had held the site since the station's decommissioning in 2009. A planning application required a full structural and equipment inventory before demolition clearance could be issued. I had done the same work at 6 other decommissioned relay sites over the past 4 years. I knew what I was walking into: empty racks, weathered cable runs, equipment listed on a handover document that would match what was actually there about 80% of the time. The trust site manager met me at the gate and walked me through the main operations room. I photographed the entrance, the logger housing, the DF antenna terminal, and the fixed telephone handset still connected to the wall. I noted each item against the handover inventory clipped to my folder. The room was stripped and damp and entirely ordinary. It was the site manager who pointed out the annex door. It was set into the back wall of a short corridor off the operations room, fitted with a padlock that did not appear on any document I had been given. The handover inventory recorded the annex as miscellaneous storage, not assessed. That phrase appeared once, in parentheses, at the bottom of the final page. No formal inventory or access record showed that anyone had opened it during those 17 years. The site manager found a key in the station's original key cabinet, logged but not cross-referenced to any specific room. I photographed the door, the padlock, and the key before it was turned. The annex was narrow, with one bare bulb. Old equipment manuals were stacked on open shelving alongside a broken chair and 3 cardboard boxes of blank log forms dated to the 1980s. Against the back wall, on a low shelf, sat a metal document box of the kind used across Irish civil service offices for decades. It was fireproof, standard issue, and its lid was sealed with a strip of station property tape. The tape had been signed and dated in pen, O'Uvain, June 1998. My father had left that station in June 1998. He had not taken this with him. I photographed the box and position on the shelf before I touched it. I photographed the seal from 3 angles and entered both photographs into my site inventory log with the location reference, the date notation, and the name on the tape. Then I called the trust's project manager and described exactly what I had found. He confirmed that sealed station property fell within my contract scope to open and catalog, and I recorded that instruction as a voice memo before I did anything else. The seal came away cleanly. Inside, there was no photograph, no personal letter, no object that belonged to a life outside this building. What Owen had left here was a cassette in a paper sleeve, a single handwritten page, a strip of folded paper from the station's direction-finding printer, and an unsealed envelope addressed in his handwriting to the formal complaints officer at the Clue Bay Maritime Rescue Coordination Service. Beneath those 4 items was a typed letter on headed CMRCS paper, dated April 1998. I read it first because it was institutional and because I already knew, in broad terms, what it would say. The letter recorded the outcome of an internal review into a complaint filed by Owen Vane, station operator, in February of that year. The finding read, unsubstantiated. Operator error not excluded. The review noted specifically that the complainant had provided no reliable technical corroboration for his account of the alleged transmission. I set that letter down and picked up the handwritten page. It was a single sheet torn from a standard station duty log, the kind used at auxiliary sites throughout the 90s. The entries were in my father's handwriting, timestamped at intervals across the evening of November 9, 1997. Routine notations came first, watch commenced, equipment checks completed, and a weather advisory received. Then, at 21:14, a different entry appeared, a Mayday received on VHF channel 16. The vessel was named Ardanwire, and its position was given as a bearing and distance from Acklehead. At 21:17, a note that he had relayed the call by telephone to the Clue Bay CMRCS duty coordinator. At 21:19, a note that acknowledgement had been received and that response was being coordinated. The log read the way a professional record is supposed to read. Each entry was concise, specific, and in sequence. I had seen enough poorly kept station logs to recognize the difference between a man who understood the purpose of contemporaneous documentation and one who did not. That did not make the entries true. A methodical log can still record something that did not happen, and the review outcome had said Owen lacked technical corroboration. The cassette was the next item in the box. I found the station's portable cassette player listed on my inventory, still in the operations room on a shelf above the logger housing. The batteries were dead. I carry a universal adapter in my kit for exactly this kind of legacy equipment, and I connected it before I let myself consider whether I actually wanted to hear what was on the tape. I pressed play. The first 30 seconds were degraded static, the kind of mid-range hiss that collects on magnetic tape stored across many years. Then a voice came through clearly enough that I could make out every word. It said Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. It gave a vessel name, Ardanwire. It gave a position, described as a bearing from Acklehead and a distance in nautical miles. Then a second voice acknowledged the call. That second voice was my father's. I stopped the tape. The cassette appeared to be a private duplicate, but I did not yet know when, how, or why Owen had made it. Hearing his voice affected me in a way I did not attempt to analyze while I was still standing in that room. What I was careful not to do was treat that reaction as evidence of anything. The voice on the recording sounded distressed, but that observation was not technical authentication. I wrote down the vessel name, the spoken position, and the timestamp showing how far into the cassette the transmission began, and I moved to the next item. The DF printout was a strip of thermal paper from the station's direction-finding system, folded twice and slightly yellowed at the edges. The direction-finding equipment at a station like this one logged VHF transmissions automatically, producing a bearing trace and a timestamp without any input from the operator on duty. This printout showed a bearing consistent with the position spoken on the cassette and a timestamp of 21 hours 14 minutes and 38 seconds on November 9, 1997. I photographed it on both sides and held it under my work light for a full minute. The timestamp was machine printed and the bearing trace was a continuous line, not a typed or handwritten entry. Owen had not produced this record himself. The station's system had generated it in response to a VHF transmission from that bearing at that time. What I could not confirm, standing in that annex, was whether the system clock had been correctly calibrated on the night in question, or whether this printout had been correctly filed with the cassette rather than belonging to some other event on another occasion. I noted both uncertainties. I do not reach conclusions before I have checked what can be checked. I went to the filing cabinet in the operations room and pulled the monthly summary for November 1997. The document was typed, formal, and signed. I found the entry for November 9th. The entry read, Routine Watch. No distress traffic. I read those words 3 times. 3 physical sources pointed in the same direction: the duplicate cassette containing the spoken position, the duty log, and the DF printout. The official monthly summary pointed in the opposite direction. They could not all be accurate. I had spent 11 years treating my father's account as the one that was wrong. I was not prepared to abandon that position on the basis of an afternoon in a room no one had formally entered in 17 years. But I was no longer prepared to hold it without examining it. What I could do was document what I had found and leave the determination to people with the authority to make it. I photographed every item in the order I had encountered it, with a numbered marker beside each one. I noted the condition of each document, the physical state of the cassette, and the legibility of the DF printout. I did not handle anything more than necessary, and I am not a forensic investigator. Treating a contractor's site inventory as a substitute for proper process would have compromised whatever the materials were worth. The unsealed envelope was the last item I catalogued. It was addressed in Owen's handwriting to the formal complaints officer at the CMRCS, and it had never been sent. The flap was unsealed, and I could see from the angle of the paper inside that it contained at least 2 pages. I did not remove them. I logged it as an unsealed appeal envelope, noted that it appeared to be a document Owen had prepared following the internal review, photographed the exterior on both sides, and placed it back in the box. Whatever Owen had written in that letter had stayed in this room for 28 years. It could stay for another few days while I established the correct procedure for handling it. There are reasons people leave things unsent, and none of those reasons become mine to override simply because I am the one who found them. I repacked the box in the order I had documented it and did not remove it from the annex. I drafted a written notification to the Trust's project manager, detailing every item I had found, the condition of the seal, the contents, and my recommendation that the box be secured pending guidance from a solicitor familiar with both estate law and public records obligations. I sent that message at 14:47 and received an acknowledgement within 10 minutes. The site manager padlocked the annex door and retained the key until further instruction. I sat in my car in the station car park and wrote my site notes for the day. The main operations room inventory was complete. The annex inventory was flagged as pending. I noted the discrepancy between the review outcome's specific claim and the presence of the DF printout, using careful language, because careful language was what the situation required. I did not write that my father had been telling the truth. I wrote that the archive contained items whose consistency with his account warranted examination by the appropriate authority. Then I searched the vessel name on my phone. The first result came back in seconds. The heading read, Ardanwire lost in November storm, 6 crew presumed dead. No distress call received. I read it twice. 6 men had gone out on November 9, 1997, and none of them had come back. The official account, repeated in the inquest record linked further down the page, stated that no distress call had been received from the vessel before it was lost. The box in that annex said Owen had heard one. 6 people were dead. The record said they had never asked for help, and my father said he had relayed their call and been told a response was coming. I did not know yet which account was accurate. But I knew that finding out was no longer optional. If a private recording contradicted an official report, which one would you trust first, and why? Episode 2 examines the official inquest into the Ardanwire, the complaint Owen filed approximately 3 months after the vessel was lost, and one specific detail in that complaint that directly contradicts what the review outcome claims he said. Subscribe to follow the 5-episode investigation.